Do you know what it feels like to be the period at the end of every sentence of blame? To be the one person in your family whose name is synonymous with disappointment? Stop scrolling for just a second, because I need to talk about what happens when you're the designated scapegoat, the default villain, and how utterly crushing it is when you finally realize that the love you craved was conditional on your silence. For nearly 20 years, that was my life. I was Alex, the elder son, the one who was perpetually clumsy, consistently irresponsible, and somehow always managing to screw things up, regardless of whether I was within 100 miles of the actual catastrophe. My brother, Liam, the golden child, floated through life like a flawless porcelain doll, untouchable, pure, and eternally deserving of grace. If a glass shattered, it was my fault for leaving it too close to the edge. If the check engine light came on in the family sedan, I must have been driving it recklessly, even if I hadn't touched the keys in a week. If Liam failed his exams, I clearly hadn't studied with him hard enough, or maybe my mere presence in the house was a distraction to his fragile academic focus. It was a dizzying, suffocating pattern, a carefully choreographed dance of deflection, where I always took the fall, and they always had an excuse ready. I remember the first time I truly understood the framework of the injustice, not just as a bad moment, but as the operating system of our family. I was 10, and Liam was 8. We had been playing in the den, a room Mom treasured because it had her imported Venetian lamp on a small side table. I had explicitly warned Liam not to swing the remote control on its lanyard. Of course, he did. It flew wide, catching the edge of the delicate lamp. The crunch of the ceramic hitting the hardwood floor was deafening, a sharp explosion that signaled the end of my peaceful afternoon. Liam instantly burst into loud, theatrical tears, running to hide behind the sofa. My heart sank, not because of the lamp, but because I knew exactly what was coming. Mom raced in, her face already pinched with fury. She didn't look at the shattered pieces. She looked straight at me. The silence before she spoke was heavy, thick with predetermined guilt. I tried to explain, stumbling over the words. "Mom, I told him, I warned Liam. He was swinging the—" But she cut me off, her voice low and dangerously cold. "Alex, how could you be so careless? That lamp was irreplaceable. You are too big for this kind of foolishness. You need to be more mindful of your surroundings." She didn't even acknowledge Liam's presence, still sniffling behind the couch. She just handed me a dustpan and brush and told me to clean up the mess I had made. The message was perfectly clear, even to my 10-year-old mind. Liam breaks it, Alex pays for it. Liam cries, Alex takes the blame. And that became the bedrock of my teenage years. While Liam enjoyed weekend freedom and late-night curfew extensions, I was perpetually grounded, serving time for transgressions I didn't commit. If Liam missed his curfew, Dad would call me, demanding to know what influence I had over my younger brother, accusing me of encouraging his reckless behavior, even if I had been home asleep since 9 o'clock. My defense, always logical and earnest, was met with a dismissive wave of the hand. "Don't argue, Alex. Just accept responsibility for once. It's time you grew up." The constant insinuation was that I was dragging Liam down, that if only I were a better example, a steadier presence, Liam would achieve his true potential, convenient receptacle of all familial disappointment. The psychological toll this takes on a person is difficult to convey. Imagine constantly anticipating an accusation, walking on invisible eggshells, editing every single word and action, trying desperately to leave no room for error, only to find that the error is automatically assigned to you anyway. After a while, you internalize it. You start to believe their narrative. Maybe I really am careless. Maybe I really am inherently flawed. Why else would this happen? Why else would two people who profess to love me treat me with such consistent suspicion and distrust? I began to withdraw, keeping my true successes quiet, avoiding conflict, because every achievement of mine was minimized and every mistake real or imagined, was magnified into a character failing. When I started college, I thought I had escaped. I moved 3 states away, determined to build a life where my worth wasn't constantly being negotiated. But the invisible strings of blame stretched across state lines. The biggest injustice, the one that truly changed the trajectory of my early adulthood, happened during my junior year. I was saving diligently for a semester abroad, working 2 jobs, eating ramen, putting every spare dollar into that specific savings account. It was a substantial amount, nearly $10,000, earmarked for Italy. Around the same time, Liam was struggling in college, not academically, but socially. He had gotten involved with a group that led him to accrue some serious debt through reckless spending, and frankly, some bad decisions involving credit cards he opened secretly. One day, I got a frantic call from my mother. She was crying, hysterical, demanding to know what I had done with my college savings. I was confused. "What are you talking about, Mom? It's in the account." She informed me that the account was empty, completely wiped out. She had access to the account because she had been the cosigner years prior. She didn't ask if I was okay. She didn't ask if someone had stolen it. Her first and only conclusion was that I had secretly withdrawn the money and squandered it on something irresponsible. "We knew we couldn't trust you with that kind of money, Alex. What did you buy? A ridiculous motorcycle? Did you gamble it away?" The accusations flew like venom. I was financially irresponsible, selfish, and deceitful. I tried to pull up my bank statements, demanding that we check the withdrawal details, but my parents had already formed their narrative. They told me that Liam had confessed. He had seen me acting strangely, making large cash withdrawals. It was a devastating, elaborate lie, built on the foundation of 2 decades of systemic blame. They insisted I return the money to the family immediately, effectively ruining my credit score when they reported the missing funds as a debt I owed them. My dream of Italy vanished. The worst part? Liam didn't even have to look me in the eye. He just stood there, head bowed, letting their baseless accusations wash over me, reinforcing the illusion of his own innocence. It wasn't until 10 years later, a decade spent feeling like a financial pariah, keeping my distance from the family, that the entire rotten structure finally collapsed. The truth didn't come out in a dramatic confrontation. It came out in the quiet, mundane details of settling my grandmother's estate. Grandma Betty was fiercely sharp and observant, the only person in the family who ever seemed to look at me with clear, untainted eyes. She had always known something was wrong. She saw the way my mother's voice changed when she addressed me versus when she addressed Liam. She noticed the slight hesitation in my father's demeanor when he scolded me for things that made no sense. Grandma Betty passed away peacefully, and as the executor of her small but meaningful estate, I was required to go through her personal papers. Deep inside an old mahogany writing desk, beneath a stack of faded holiday cards, I found a sealed envelope addressed to me, marked, "To be opened only after my passing." My hands were shaking as I broke the seal. Inside was not just a letter, but a folded, notarized affidavit and copies of bank statements from 10 years prior, the exact time frame of my missing college funds. The letter was heartbreaking. Grandma wrote that she had witnessed the entire saga of the missing money. She hadn't been there when Liam initially confessed his severe debt problem to my parents, but she had been there immediately after. She explained that my parents, desperate to save Liam's reputation and worried about the legal trouble he could face, had hatched a plan. They needed quick cash. They knew I had been saving, and they knew that if they blamed me, the family unit would accept it without question. They used their co-signing access to transfer my money, paying off Liam's debts, and then gaslighting me into believing I had spent it and forgotten. Grandma's letter explained that she tried to intervene, begging them to tell me the truth. My mother had wept and said, "Alex can handle it. He's tough. Liam would break." That phrase echoed in my mind. Alex can handle it. My strength was weaponized against me, used as justification for cruelty and deceit.
The letter also contained the affidavit, a document she had forced my mother to sign years earlier, detailing the exact transfer of the funds and confirming Liam's full responsibility for the original debt, a safeguard Grandma insisted upon in case they tried to completely disinherit me later on. She had been protecting me from the shadows. She had been watching the entire time. The bank statements confirmed every single word. The transaction was listed as an internal family transfer, signed off by my mother. The sheer, calculated betrayal hit me like a physical blow. It wasn't just $10,000. It was 10 years of doubt, 10 years of feeling like a financial failure, 10 years of walking away from opportunities because I couldn't afford them, all because they needed to protect their image of the golden boy. I didn't confront them immediately. The revelation required a period of profound grief. Grief for the childhood I never had, grief for the trust that was irrevocably broken, and grief for the parents I thought I had. I spent 3 weeks sitting with the evidence, running the tape of my life back, seeing the pattern now, illuminated by the harsh, cold light of proof. Every single time I had been blamed, it was easier for them to believe I was wrong than to admit Liam was fallible. Every single time, they sacrificed my emotional well-being to maintain the fragile ego of their favorite son. The confrontation finally happened at a family dinner, the annual Thanksgiving event, the very tableau of the perfection they insisted on maintaining. Liam was holding court, telling a story about his recent promotion, attributing his success to the sacrifices he made in college. My mother was beaming, Dad nodding proudly. I waited until the moment of highest contentment, when the air was thick with their self-congratulation. I cleared my throat, the sound shockingly loud in the room. "Liam," I said, my voice steady, betraying none of the turmoil inside. "Tell us about those college sacrifices, the ones you made 10 years ago. Specifically, the sacrifice of the $10,000 that was meant for my study abroad. The money you convinced Mom and Dad to steal from my account to pay off your gambling and credit card debts." The room went silent, a deeper, heavier silence than the one that used to precede Mom's accusations. It felt like the entire world had stopped rotating. Liam's face went white, instantly morphing from triumphant to terrified. My parents froze, forks halfway to their mouths, their eyes darting between me and the floor. "Alex, what are you doing?" Dad finally managed, his voice a panicked whisper. "We don't need to discuss old history." I reached into my pocket and placed the notarized affidavit and the bank statements on the table, right next to the turkey platter. "This isn't old history, Dad. This is the truth. This is why I didn't study abroad. This is why I spent years thinking I was a wasteful idiot. This is proof that you not only lied to me, but you collaborated to financially cripple me, all to protect Liam's perfectly manicured image." My mother started crying, the same performative tears she used when I broke the Venetian lamp, but this time they held no power over me. "It was just money, Alex. We were trying to help Liam. He was desperate. He's sensitive." That was the key. He was sensitive. I was tough. I could handle being lied to, robbed, and emotionally abused because their narrative required my toughness. Liam finally spoke, his voice weak. "Alex, look, I was young. I'm sorry. I was pressured." The apology was worthless, empty, delivered only under the threat of exposure. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I just looked at them, one by one. I looked at Liam, who had willingly thrown his own brother under the bus and benefited from the lie for a decade. I looked at my father, the man who was supposed to teach me integrity, who stood silently by. And I looked at my mother, the one who convinced herself that protecting one child justified destroying the other. "No," I said, my voice gaining strength, not from anger, but from absolute clarity. It wasn't just money. It was trust. It was my future. It was the fundamental expectation
that my parents would not actively cause me harm, and you failed. I picked up the documents, folded them neatly, and put them back in my pocket. I looked at the three of them, paralyzed by the sudden collapse of their reality. I used to spend every waking moment wondering why I couldn't measure up. I thought I was fundamentally flawed. I tried so hard to be the son you wanted, but you didn't want a son. You wanted a receptacle for blame. You wanted a safe place to hide your favorite child's mistakes. The realization was a deep, bone-aching release. The weight of the world, the constant expectation of failure, lifted entirely. It was never about me. It was about their inability to parent fairly. It was about their own narcissism and the need to protect their perfect family story. I had been the scapegoat, the necessary sacrifice to maintain the illusion. I stood up and left the house. I didn't look back, and I haven't been back since. The silence now is beautiful. It is the silence of freedom, of knowing the truth, of no longer having to anticipate the next unjust accusation. It's been years now, and while my parents have tried intermittent, half-hearted contact, always demanding forgiveness without offering true accountability, I remain distant.
They still don't understand that an apology that begins with, "I did it because I was trying to protect Liam," is not an apology at all. It's just another form of justification. To anyone out there who hears this and sees themselves in the shadow, who has been told they are difficult, too emotional, too sensitive, or too much trouble, listen closely to this realization because it's the most important truth I ever learned. You are not the problem. You were never the problem. The problem lies with those who needed a villain to justify their favoritism. The problem is the system, not the person they exiled. If you've been living in that shadow, if you've taken the blame for years to keep the peace, you need to understand that keeping the peace costs you everything: your mental health, your self-worth, and sometimes your financial stability. You deserve clarity. You deserve justice. You deserve to walk away from that family narrative and write your own story, a story where you are the hero, not the villain. If this story resonated with you, if you have your own moment of realization that broke the cycle of blame, please share your experience below. We need to hear these stories, because the only way to heal from being a scapegoat is to finally reclaim your voice. Hit the like button if you found any piece of strength in this realization, and subscribe if you want to keep hearing stories of truth and overcoming family injustice. Thank you for listening, and remember, your truth is not up for negotiation.